Hey friends, welcome back to the Journal Feed. My name is Nick Zelt, and this is the only place where I get to spoon feed you guys the latest and greatest of emergency medicine. This is the audio version of the past week's summaries, which this week were brought to you by our authors, Catherine Berger, Joshua Belfer, Millie Casse, me, and Clay Smith. Okay, let's skip straight to the third article, titled Task-Specific versus General-Purpose AI Models in ECG Analysis, a comparative study with emergency medicine specialists, out of the American Journal of Emergency Medicine. Now, AI, it's coming for us, guys. It's coming for everyone. But I'm not sure how long it's going to take before AI is a mandatory part of your day-to-day, but it certainly eventually will be. My advice up front, I'm going to give it to you, is that you should use AI at least in some capacity. Don't use it at work right now. It kind of sucks. You can use it to write some notes, though. That's probably reasonable. You're better at practicing medicine than it is, though. But you should use it in some capacity, at least somewhere in your life, so that you're familiar with how it works, how it reacts when you interact with it, so that as it becomes more of a mandatory part of your life, you're not learning to use it from scratch. It's new technology, and new technology is important to try to keep up to date with, no matter how awful and kind of evil it seems. I'm not making this argument for TikTok, though. TikTok is it's bad for your brain. Okay, we're going to be talking about ECGs today, though. Now, ChatGPT has outperformed emergency physicians and cardiologists in some ways in medicine, but not consistently and not necessarily in real-world settings. Now, there are always newer and newer AI models, such as ChatGPT 4.0, 4.0, I'm not sure what character that is. And there's also Canva GPT, which can include visual stimuli and is more geared towards that. And then you have things that are purpose-made for things medical, like ECG Reader GPT, which is supposed to be good at reading ECGs. However, it's not altogether clear that specific training in one area or another necessarily makes an AI better at something, especially when it's still based off of the original AI model. So the authors wanted to do a comparison of these three AI models, ChatGPT 4.0, Canva GPT, and ECG Reader GPT. Now, the test that they performed this on, it was really artificial. I don't really care how things do on this test, but this is the test that they chose. They took ECGs, which were example questions from a textbook, and they were all multiple choice. So kind of fake ECGs and multiple choice. This doesn't mimic real life, so I don't really care what the results were. Yeah, of course, ChatGPT is going to be good at writing tests, but who cares? Anyways, 30 of the 50 ECGs in the test were considered potentially life-threatening, so at least there's that. And guess who came out on top? Emergency physicians were the top performers. And then in second place was the ECG Reader specifically made for reading ECGs, ECG Reader GPT, coming in second. And then after that was ChatGPT 4.0 and then Canva GPT. What I would have loved to see was something included like Cardio PM, the app, which isn't strictly artificial intelligence, but it's machine learning and is a real tool that people are trying to incorporate in their day-to-day. It's even FDA approved in the United States, not in Canada. I'm sad, but hopefully eventually. And that would have been more interesting to see as a comparison. However, that would not be able to read and interpret and answer multiple choice questions, so I know why they weren't able to include something like that. Altogether, all to say though, this is kind of fun, even if I don't care about the results of this. And it's interesting to know that when you specifically kind of train an AI to do something, even though it doesn't actually have any more training, it's just getting more specific instructions and stuff like that, it does actually get better at the task that it's supposed to do. I am not going to lie, I was originally skeptical that that would be the case in general, but this is kind of interesting. Even if this does not apply to real life at all, because these were multiple choice questions. All right, in a spoonful, custom AI ECG readers do better than general ones, but worse than real physicians, at least in this study. And then we have the fourth article titled Cephalexin twice daily versus 4 times daily for the treatment of urinary tract infections diagnosed in the emergency department out of the American Journal of Emergency Medicine. Now, I'm sure everybody here is familiar with Cephalexin. Cephalexin is a good drug. It's quite consistent. It's a first-generation cephalosporin. It's good for treating a lot of things like cellulitis. It's a good one for, but it's also good for treating UTIs. The downside to Cephalexin is that it's supposed to be dosed 4 times a day. What's the reason for that? Well, the half-life of Cephalexin is only 1 hour, and so you have to dose it pretty often. However, some people have been positing that perhaps you could only dose it twice a day, and that it would still be a good treatment for UTIs. The reason we hate 4 times a day is because, oh my goodness, 4 times a day? That's a lot of times a day. And 4 times, you can't even do like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You don't even have that like natural breakup that you could do it at. I don't even know when you take pills when you take them 4 times a day. You gotta keep a lot more attention to that. Anyways, these authors wanted to do a study, and they did, comparing Cephalexin given twice a day or 4 times a day. And this was a retrospective study using treatment of UTIs in adults. And what did they find? Well, treatment failure, which was the primary outcome, was the same between both groups, 18.7% for the BID group and 15% for the 4 times a day group. That's a p-value of 0.46, so nowhere near significant, which is interesting and which is pretty good, but they didn't really measure how compliant these patients actually were to 4 times a day. And it's hard, like I said, it's hard to be compliant to 4 times a day. So I don't really know that we're necessarily comparing apples to oranges. Another interesting finding was that treatment failure was not related to the duration of antibiotics, be it 5 days, 7 days, or even 10 days. Which is interesting to know too, because we've definitely seen a lot of pediatric evidence which shows that we really don't have to treat UTIs for as long as we used to think that we had to. However, no one's really pushing this point in adults. Now, personally, while I think this is all kind of interesting, why not just not give Cephalexin? Give cefadroxil. Cefadroxil is another first-generation cephalosporin, so you get the exact same coverage in terms of bugs. However, cefadroxil is supposed to be dosed twice a day. So then you're not doing any weird, sketchy stuff that might not actually cover as well as you like, unless you base it on this one retrospective study. No, you're just giving a drug that's being dosed appropriately, has the same coverage, and is twice a day. You could even give cefadroxil once a day if you look it up to date. So why not just go with cefadroxil? Honestly, the formularies at some of the hospitals I worked at, they've removed Cephalexin from the formulary because why would you ever give it when you can give cefadroxil? It just doesn't make any sense. But I'm sure some people don't have access to cefadroxil perhaps, and they only have Cephalexin as an option. Maybe in pediatrics, the oral formulation is more available. I'm not sure in every circumstance. So I'm sure someone will find this information helpful, that even if your patient has poor compliance and is only taking half of their 4 times daily doses, that they'll still probably treat their UTI well. In a spoonful, if you are hard set on giving Cephalexin as your antibiotic of choice, but you don't like that it's dosed 4 times a day because you don't think your patients will actually take that, then you could dose it twice a day instead, and it seems to still be quite effective for UTIs. I, on the other hand, will continue to just give cefadroxil. Okay, that's all the articles we talked about from this week. Let's do a quick wrap up of what we talked about. From the third article, customized artificial intelligence models outperformed general ones for the interpretation of ECGs, but this was not very applicable to real life. Then from the fourth article, Cephalexin can be given twice a day. Maybe, but why chance it when you can give an identical antibiotic that's already meant to be given BID like cefadroxil? Now, if you are hearing this right now, then you are not a part of the members feed, and so you missed 3 articles from this past week. What were those articles that you missed about? Well, one was about that not everything that can bleed will bleed. The second was about OCAs with asystolic rhythms as the initial rhythm. How did those patients fare? And finally, we talked about fibrinogen and massive transfusion protocols, what to do with it. Links to all the original articles can be found at journalfeed.org, or just follow the links in your show notes. Our goal here is for you to read less, learn more, and save lives, 1 spoonful at a time. Thank you.